Good afternoon and welcome to today's installment of the Boost Your Skills webinar series, where we enlist the advice of specialist experts in order to help you make the most out of your university experience and to acquire the skills to help you succeed and develop both professionally and on a personal level. I'm Siddharth, and joining me is Jenny, and we are your Boost Your Skills team. This event will be in webinar format, so you will not be able to turn your cameras and mics on, but we would still love to hear from you through the chat function. This is a safe space with no judgments being passed, so please feel free to ask any questions without fear or worry. If you are still anxious, feel free to message Jenny or myself anonymously and we will pass it on. The webinar will consist of an interactive presentation which contains some polls and some time at the end for Q&A. The event is also being live streamed to our YouTube channel, so don't worry if you've missed something. We will be sharing a link to the video and slides after the event. Finally, a big thank you to all our attendees who have pre-submitted questions. Today's event is in partnership with NatWest Group, and we are pleased to introduce Douglas Fletcher and Jenny Jack. Douglas is a financial well-being expert who has worked in NatWest and RBS for 15 years in HR, risk, commercial, and financial departments. Jenny is a current graduate who works in HR and more specifically in financial well-being. So now, without further delay, I'd like to hand over to Douglas and Jenny.
Thank you very much, and say good afternoon to you from a very wet, sunny, windy, cold Edinburgh. Now, I've normally got a picture of a beach or the moon behind me, but for some reason today I've got some nice red curtains, so not quite as exotic, but stick with it. So yes, my name's Douglas Fletcher, and as you just heard, I work for NatWest Bank. Now, you've probably guessed just by looking at the enthusiasm on this very first slide that we're going to be talking about financial well-being today. So I hope you can get this passionate too. Today we're going to look at two things at a relatively fast pace. The first one is what is financial well-being? And the second one is what can you do to look after your own financial well-being? So get ready. So we'll try and get you a copy of the slides so you can read them many times over. Feel free to take notes and we'll try and leave some time at the end for some questions. So if we can move to the next slide, please, which is even more fun-filled than this one. So yeah, so we're going to be running a few poll questions throughout these slides. This is to ensure you stay awake, but they also say never work with animals or interactive polls. So let's see how we get on. So here's your first poll. The first one is, how confident are you with managing your money? So say, hopefully you can see that on your screen now. If you can't, don't worry, just have a think about it. And the options are very confident, fairly confident, I haven't put much thought into it so far, or not confident at all. So yeah, if you're able to vote, fantastic. While you're doing that, I'm just going to flag that we're going to be covering quite a fair bit of information today, but please don't worry if you don't catch it all. This is more of a sort of signposting exercise and to get your thinking caps on. Now, there'll be some slides that will have lots of information, and that's quite deliberate, even though I get into trouble for putting slides out with lots of information. This is just so you can revisit them in your own time and look through them. So don't worry if you can't read them all now or your screen's too small. You may even have enjoyed me on a presentation similar to this a year and a half ago, because time flies when you're having fun, and that's great too. Obviously, the more times you can engage and refresh yourself with money topics, the better. So let's see if we can read the results here. So very confident, we've got 0. So it feels like there's a bit of work to do, so that's great, you've come to the right place. Fairly confident is 52%. I haven't put much thought into it is 13%, and not confident at all is 35%. So that's really helpful. Thank you very much for sending those through. Well, we'll certainly get you thinking about money today. So if we move to the next slide. So today we're going to cover 5 different topics that we've lumped together under financial well-being. Now, if you look up financial well-being, you might find all sorts of different combinations of these topics, but this is a really good place to start. So we've got 1, brilliant basics, which is looking at budgeting and planning, which you can see in purple there. We've got achieving your goals through savings and investments, number 2. Then we've got looking at your money worries through debt, fraud and abuse in pink. And then we're preparing for the unexpected through insurance and other protection in green. And then finally, touching on the future with saving for life after work in blue. Now, as you can see, financial well-being is a very large topic, and it can sometimes be confusing. It's confusing to a lot of people, including me, so that's quite normal. Financial well-being is also very personal to each of us. Now, you may be an expert in, say, budgeting and planning, but you may know nothing about pensions. So we're going to cover a lot of different things, but my advice to you is to get stuck into the areas that matter to you. So if you're interested in something or worried about something, certainly focus on that to start with. The good news is there's no exam at the end. However, if you can take positive steps in any of these topics in the next few weeks, months, years, then you'll be growing your confidence, and that will be fantastic. So before we get stuck into the detail of financial well-being, I thought we'd start with an interesting study, which is on the next slide, which is the 7 Money Personality Types by Ken Honda. And I put this one up here because when we look at financial health, one thing that most people fail to consider is their money personality type, or their approach and emotional response to money. So we each have our own beliefs and emotions about money, and they're usually shaped by your individual life experiences. They've either been passed down through childhood or influenced by your current situation. So these 7 traits you can see here were identified by Ken Honda. Well worth reading his study if you're bored. Now, we typically fall into a number of these types and not just one, but I'm going to leave this up here for a bit, and I'm going to see if you can think of anyone you know who falls into these categories. So I'll pause for a second as you start putting your friends and family into this. Are you a compulsive saver? So my 8-year-old son is a compulsive saver. If he has any money, he puts it in his Manchester United wallet and he leaves it there. You might be a compulsive spender. My 6-year-old daughter is a compulsive spender. She buys anything that's plastic or looks like a doll. You might be a compulsive money maker. I like to think I'm one of these, but I'm not very good at it. So that's probably where I want to focus. You might also be indifferent to money. So this is quite an interesting topic. It might be that you don't think about it or it doesn't impact your decisions. I don't know many people like that, but you can imagine there are people out there like that. There's saver splurger. This is probably more like my wife. She saves it and then she splurges it, which is a great word. You might be a gambler, whether that's going for fancy financial products like cryptocurrency or betting and things like that, or just picking riskier products. Or you might be a worrier, probably like my mum, who worries about most things, and you worry about money and say that's absolutely fine too. So I suppose the question I'd ask you is, do you recognize yourself in any of these? And what could you do with that information? So anyway, we're going to move on to some financial wellbeing background. I'm going to hand over to Jenny, who's going to take us through our first 3 pillars that we've just looked at. Jenny has recently been in your shoes as a student, so she's going to impart all her learned knowledge for you. So thank you, Jenny. Over to you.
Thank you, Douglas. I'll definitely try my best at that. So if we just go on to the next slide, please. So one of the biggest questions is, why is it good to have good personal money management? And well, that's because it can affect us in many different ways. And if we don't have good personal money management, it can lead to stress and anxiety. And if we're looking at the stats on the slide in front of us, you can see that there's about 15 million people in the UK who are struggling just to afford sort of their daily needs and dipping into debt to make ends meet. 4 in 10 of us who are of working age have less than £100 in savings, and 1 in 10 have no savings at all. So from those stats there, what you can see is it's very common not to be on top of your money. But your financial well-being is super important. But it's just letting you know that if you're struggling, you're not alone. And there are some tips that we'll share in this presentation that can help you along the way. So when we're sharing about tips, what we want you to do is to try and get a better control of your personal finances and think about what's important to you, as this will be different for us all. So we don't just want to stick our head in the sand, and anything you can do to make yourself feel more confident about money is always helpful, and coming here today is a great step. So what we'll be covering today in this session is around about creating a budget, tips on dealing with the cost of living, some savvy spending ideas, savings, debt, and the importance of insurance and pensions. If we could just go on to the next slide, please. So why is this all important? Some people love money, some people don't, some don't want to talk about it. There's a bit of a stigma around it in the UK. But it's one of these things that is fundamental in the society we're in. We use it from everything from food to shelter, your basic needs, planning for the future, and luxuries in life. So it's really important that we open up the subject and we get away from sort of the taboo around our money. So next slide, please. So how do we make decisions? On the face of things, you could be mistaken for thinking managing your money is quite simple. It's just whatever's sitting in your bank account, and that's what you're dealing with, your expenses going in and out. But that's a misconception, because not every decision that we make is a rational decision. Sometimes our feelings come into it, and it's what is important to us at the time rather than maybe thinking down the line. So if you think that that night out with your friends sounds so much better than thinking about the impact that this might have on your food budget for the next week, you know, you're not alone. So what we need to do is we need to think about what's important to you, what do you need your money for, and this is all different for everybody. Next slide, please. But just before we get into those pillars Douglas was talking about, you're going to hear the term financial well-being a lot during this webinar. So what we want to do is we want to define it for you, so you know exactly what we're talking about. So financial well-being is how people feel about the control they have over their money. It's about achieving a sense of security and feeling that you're in charge of your day-to-day finances and having enough money to make a choice about the life you live. It's not about how much money you have, but it's about being smart with what you do have and how you can make it work best for you. So it's important that we all look after our financial well-being, because our spending can affect more than just our bank account. So you can see on screen, we've got the 4 pillars of well-being. We have physical, mental, social, and financial. And research shows that if you're struggling with money, it can also affect your mental health, and it can also impact your physical health and your social well-being as a result. They're all interconnected, which is why any steps you can take in one area can impact all the other areas. And that's why it's really important that we want to stay on top of our financial well-being, knowing that it interconnects to other areas of our well-being. So without further ado, let's get to the fun part. Next slide, please. And let's get started with the brilliant basics of budgeting and planning. But before we get into that, we do have another wee poll. So next slide, please. Do you have a budget right now? And don't worry if you don't. It's okay if you don't really know what one is, because we're going to see if we can get a bit clearer on that in the next coming slides. I'll just give you a little minute to get all of our answers in there. Okay, I think that is all the answers we've got there. So nearly an even split. We've got 48% who do have a budget, which is brilliant. You're off to a great start. And then we have 52% who don't have a budget right now. So hopefully we can give you some hints and tips around about creating a budget, or some better tips on those who already have a budget on what you can do to get a bit clearer on that as well. So we go to the next slide, please. Fabulous. So for the benefit of those who don't have a budget, I'm going to quickly start off by defining what a budget is. And essentially, it's an estimate of your money coming in versus your money going out over a set period of time. It doesn't need to be a big, scary spreadsheet. I've got a friend who likes to put it down to the penny on her spreadsheet, calculate every little thing. And then I have other friends who have what you can see on the screen here, just sort of set out in 3 different columns to make it nice and simple, to see what you have coming in and what you have going out. But before I get into a bit more like that, I sort of want to use an analogy we can use to think about this. And this is the leaky bucket analogy. So imagine your bank account is like a leaky bucket. Every now and then a tap goes on and you fill it up. Think of this as your income coming in, your student loans, your part-time job, if you have a bursary or anything like that. But annoyingly, your bucket is full of holes, and this is leaking your money. So the water level will constantly be changing, but as long as there's always enough water in your bucket at one time, there's no problem. However, there is a problem if the water level gets a bit too low and you need to start thinking about plugging those holes. This is what we would think of as your spending habits. And this is where a budget comes in. It helps to keep the water level consistent, so you can continue to spend your money on the things that you need and you enjoy, within reason, of course. So let's try and bring this to life and go through a basic budget, and hopefully you can try this at home later. So what you can see here is our basic budget on screen. One column, what's coming in, what's going out. And then we want to think about, does this really need to go out? And that last question there is the key one. Like, does this need to go out? It's going to be different from column 2, which is what has to go out. So your food, your rent, all of those costs that you can't really get away from. But if you have your student loans coming in and what's going out, you want to see the difference between those two, because we always want to have more coming in than we do going out. So this is why it's important to increase what you have coming in, decrease what's going out, and then have a little think about the third column. So could you share your Netflix passwords or your Apple TV passwords? That gym membership that you have, are you going to the gym as much and getting your money's worth of that? But what is really important is, to have some flexibility in there, because your budget is going to vary from month by month or week by week. And that's when things like Christmas or holidays, trips that you have planned, events, or it's the start of term and you need to buy more of these books that you need for your courses. So it's good to also think about, what months of the year am I going to have these expenses coming in? If you're getting a bursary at the start of the year, think, how can I break this down over the months, especially if there are months that I know are going to be more expensive and costly than the others, and try and factor that in. But it's also super important, to remember to have fun in there as well. If you have a coffee that you need every day that you go to uni, and that is the highlight of your day, keep that in there, because we don't want to budget right down to the last penny and then not have anything left for those little enjoyments that we can have. So a good rule of thumb that I like is the 50-20-30 rule. So it's 50% on your needs, 20% on your savings if you can, and 30% on your wants. But it's completely up to you, and everybody's circumstances are different. So it's what works best for you. Another great tip I would have is to set up a different bank account. So you have your savings account and your current account, and just keep what your spending money is that you've budgeted in that current account that you can send out. Just so you know, if any unexpected expenses come in, you'll have enough money there, and you'll know exactly what you have to spend and what you don't. So just keep all of that in mind, and we will go on to sharing some tips on how you can sort of set this budget up in the next slide, please. So as we said, the first thing about your budget is understanding your day-to-day, your week-to-week, and your month-to-month position. And it isn't glamorous, as you'll know, but it is important. So once you've mapped out all of your spending, the next place to start is think, where do you want to keep your budget? Do you want to keep it on a big, massive Excel spreadsheet? Do you want to have a simple one in front of you that you write down in your notepad? Or there are some great resources online that you can also have a look at with free budgeting tools. We have listed a couple on the screen here. The app Emma is great because it connects all of your accounts. So you don't need to go in and manually put all those accounts in each month. It's got all the information there, and it will tell you every month and keep those all connected. It can set up a budget for you, and it can help categorize your expenses at any time. There are also some great guides out there if you want to read up more about budgeting, and just take some time, see what's out there. As we said, this is all about your personal budgeting journey. So your style will be your own, and you can see what resources are out there that benefit you. The next slide, please. Perfect. So do I really need this? This question should always be in the back of your mind if you're making any purchases outside of your daily needs. So this will be the column that we're thinking, does this expense really need to go out? Do I need those new shoes? Do I need to buy all of these textbooks, or can I get them elsewhere in the library? Do I need that new phone? So this is a question we should always have. And a good tip, if you're thinking, maybe I don't really need this right now, is to add what you want to your basket and sit on it in a few days. And if you really want it, and it's in your budget, then revisit your purchase. And what we can do is we can look at some great tips and tricks that can help you with this purchase and try and get you the best price for it. So keep this question in mind, and we'll move on to the next slide, please. So there are some great ways to make your money go further whilst being at university. And I definitely miss everything that is on this slide as I'm no longer eligible for it, having left. So hopefully you can make the most of it in the time that you do have still at university. So a great place to start is to think about choosing the right bank account for you. So a bank account, it doesn't need to just be somewhere that you put your money and you forget about it. There are some tips out there and some student accounts that you can really benefit from. So at NatWest, the student offering, if you were to open a student bank account, you would receive £50 and a 4-year free taste card worth £40 and an interest-free overdraft up to £500, which can really go a long way if you need that extra help. We also have discounted travel cards that are out there. So if you're under the age of 26, you can get a travel card with a third off of any rail travel. You can get discounted bus passes. If you're in Scotland and you're under 22, you will receive this for free. And that's on any bus you want to go on. You can sign up for that. And if you use Unirider, then you can also get up to 40% off of other bus services elsewhere in the UK. But my favorite part is the discount platforms that you get as you're a student. And all you need is an email address. And Unidays and Student Beans, you can get anything from 20% off of food shops. You can get it off of other online retailers, gym memberships, all of this. If it's in your budget and you're thinking about it, these are really great places to start. And it only takes an extra sort of 30 seconds to go around and see what's out there. But as you know, everything varies from bank to bank and uni to uni and country to country. So ask around your friends, see what they're doing and see if there's anything you can get started on using. But that's just another good link there. If you're revisiting the slides, Money Saving Expert, you can see a whole host of different student tips and everything on a lot more than we've covered in this slide. So on to the next slide, please. Perfect. So this is just some more savvy spending ideas. If you don't have a discount on any of those university apps that we've mentioned, you know, there are some other great ones about Honey and whatnot, because online and Quidco that are really good and helpful tips on there. Because we don't always want to cut back. It's just sort of seeing if we need it, if we can get it for the best price. So yeah, that's brilliant. And then on to shopping on the high street. There are all of these tricks being used by retailers and whatnot with great shop fronts, great smelling products coming out of your donuts or your burgers. But you know, this is just people trying to lure you in to see what's what and see if they can get you spending any money in their store. So make sure you always go equipped with your student card to these places, because even if you don't find a discount online, it might be in store. Gas and electricity, another big one at the moment. Right now, you might not find the best prices out there with the cost of living going on, but these prices and everything will come back. So it might be quite complicated to go out and look at these things, but you know, you'll definitely at another time be able to compare prices out there and see if you can make a good saving on these rates. And again, just review your direct debits, make sure what's going out needs to come out. And then if you're looking for a new phone or anything, try and haggle. If you're a customer for a long time, you might receive a discount on there too. On to the next slide, please. So we talked a lot about sort of tips on saving, but what does this all mean when it comes to the cost of living and prices are high? If we're just looking about those basics sort of day to day. And all this information is great, but as we were saying, times are tough right now with the cost of living. So we've looked at budgeting And we've covered this in earlier slides. So please go back and see how your budget is doing and if you can set one up. And if you don't, if there are any other tricks out there you can use. Use your overdraft wisely. Look for the best student rates out there, linking back to picking the best student account for you. Saving money on food. If you think about a meal plan, I don't know about you, but the amount of extra money I spend on my weekly shop if I go out without a list is quite a lot, as all these little extras add up if you get hungry as you're going around the store. So having a meal plan in place is definitely great for pre-planning. Make use of public transport. Can you get a discount? A part-time job if you have the time to bring in that extra cash. Buying secondhand. This could be secondhand books at university, secondhand clothes, or even selling what you don't use anymore online and try and bring in some cash that way. Best energy deals. Compare. Go online, see what's out there, and see what works best for you. Changing the way you socialize. Again, that's sort of, do you need to go to the pub for a pint with your friends, or could you have a drink at home? Or if you're going out elsewhere, you know, do you need to go out and spend money, or can you come up with something else that you guys can do to still hang out and have a great time, but not spend as much? Make the most of cashback sites. This is what we were saying with all of those great discount sites out there, especially if you're a student. There's lots out there to go and see where you can save money, and see what support's available. This is a big one. If you're struggling, see what support that your uni provides, what grants, bursaries, or even just someone to talk to is about. It's a really great place to start. Okay, next slide, please. And once we have our budget in order, and if there's any cash left at the end of the month, you can start thinking about your savings and investments. So next slide, please. We have another wee poll here. And with this poll, I kind of want you to think, if I gave you £200 right now, what would you do? So if you got some money, what would you usually do? Would you spend? Would you think, I've got loads of bills to pay, no treats for me? Check what bills I must pay and then spend whatever's left over. Check what bills I must pay and then save what is left over. Or would you save for a rainy day? I'll just give you a wee second to get those responses in there. And this slide is great to see sort of a spread of answers amongst it. And we can also think about relating back to Douglas's money personality slide from earlier here. If you revisit that. Perfect. So what you can see here is 7% of you are spenders. 14% say that you've got loads of bills to pay, so there are no treats. 21% check what bills you pay and then spend of whatever is left over. 46% of you, check what bills you must pay and then save whatever is left over. I think, it's a double one there. And then saving for a rainy day is 11%. Perfect. So if we go on to the next slide. Thank you. We can sort of see the psychology of saving. So this might be why some of us are spenders, some of us are savers, and some of us like to sort of see what's out there and what we have left at the end of the month or the week before we get looking into anything else. So there are a lot of studies that have been done on the psychology of saving, and it's all about building those good savings habits. This isn't going to happen overnight. And you could easily do a dissertation on this, but I think one thing we can all agree on is one dissertation is enough. So we'll keep it quite short here. But assuming that you have money left over at the end of your month, no matter how much, so if it's how little it is or large it is, when it comes to actually saving it, it's all a game of the mind. So for most of us, we might prefer instant gratification, even if waiting that little bit extra can benefit us more in the future. And it means it can be quite difficult to put that money away. So we're thinking about some tips that could help you here. So number one, creating a compelling reason to save. This is when you want to think about making sure you know what or why you're saving. So it's having that goal in mind that'll help you prioritize. And this could be thinking about buying your own place, a car, a concert, paying off that debt that you have, or just generally having peace of mind. Just getting clear on that why is a brilliant place to start. Then we want to think about building in those habits. So after a while, it just becomes second nature that we're saving money each month or each time anything comes in. So for example, this could be moving your money into a savings account instead of your current account that we were speaking about earlier, as it's out of sight, out of mind. And then again, we want to remember to reward ourselves, because all this saving, it can be a lot if there's no fun in there. So don't forget to reward yourself occasionally. It'll help you keep focused. And then finally, creating a saving habit takes time, and changing other behaviors that are hardwired into us and need to be rewired can take that bit of time. So you want to be able just to start small or however large you want, but just remember all of this takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. But it's great to start thinking about this and get those goals in place. On to the next slide, please. So this slide is deliberately busier, so you can revisit it another time and have a more thorough read through about, again, savings and investments here. So the first goal when we're thinking about our savings and investments is to have an emergency pot. This is about 3 months of your outgoings. We can call it your rainy day fund. This gives you a bit more financial security should anything unexpected come up. It buys you time and generally can just make you feel more comfortable. And it's only after we have that rainy day fund set up that we can start thinking about your short-term and long-term goals, and how you'll save for those goals. So again, sort of talking about short term, it'll be about that holiday or paying off your debt, or even if it's opening an ISA, which is an individual savings account, so you could receive a better rate of interest on what you do put away. All of these things are worth thinking about in the short term. And then in the future, if you're saving for the longer term, you might consider investing. And this can take many forms. It can be stocks and shares or your pensions. But remember that investments go up as well as they go down. And you should never invest in something that you can't afford to lose. So seek professional advice where appropriate, and please do your own research. I do know just from my personal experience here, just see what's on YouTube if you want to learn the basic terms of it, or start reading some books that are out there. But yeah, do your own research and seek advice would be the best piece I can say on that one. And it can be tricky to think about all of this on the screen. It can be overwhelming to think about it all if you have some debt that you need to pay, or just to even start that savings journey. So you should try and have an emergency fund. But if you have expensive debt, you'll want to reduce that when you can. So an example for me personally would be I've got a 0% car loan, but if I've got a credit card with a 30% interest rate, that's where you want to be focusing on first, is reducing that debt. And it doesn't matter how little it is that you're paying off, as long as you're paying it off and bringing that cost down. That is a fantastic place to start. So just think about where you can make the biggest difference. On to the next slide, please. Brilliant. So we're on pillar 3 and money worries here. So debt, fraud, and abuse. And if we go to the next slide, we have another poll for you. So does managing your money cause you stress? So the answers are always, sometimes, or never. Brilliant. I'll just give it a few more seconds to see if there are any more answers coming in. Okie doke. So 26% say always, 63% say sometimes, and 11% say that money doesn't cause them any stress. So as you can see from the answers on this poll, if money does cause you stress and managing it does, you're not alone. So if we hop on to the next slide, please. So with all of this stress can bring with it a lot of worry. And if we're worrying about money and more specifically debt, the moral of the story is if you need help, reach out. Reach out to family, reach out to friends, and there are some great online resources that we'll go through in a second that you can also reach out for further support on. But debt is a problem, and like physical health, we don't just want to stick our head in the sand. You can see from the stats on screen, 1 in 6 people are struggling with debt, but only 1 of those 6 who are struggling with debt actually take debt advice or seek support. Now, not all debt is bad debt, and many of us have it. It's our student loans, it could be your mortgages, anything like that, once you get a bit older down the line and are buying those houses. But if you're continually spending more than you earn or more than you have coming in, you're missing payments, you're maxing out your credit cards, and your overdraft is being used for purchases that are sort of out with your daily needs, like buying those new trendy clothes or your phones, then maybe it's time to start thinking about what support you can seek. Or if there's anyone else out there that you know who is portraying these signs, you can sort of pinpoint them on where they can go for support. So when you're experiencing these signs, you know, you want to sort of think about where you can go and think of it a bit like taking care of your physical health as well by going out and getting that advice. So if we go on to the next slide, please. There are loads of great places that you can get help or just seek advice on any of these matters. And your university is a great place to start. Just research and find what works well for you. But there's a lot of support available and charities and organizations that you can contact if you need to. There are a few listed here, but you can have a quick search online and see if anything meets your more specific circumstances. As I was alluding to in the last slide, it's like visiting the doctor. The sooner you take action and tackle these issues, the better. And please do reach out to the appropriate people. And all universities will have support and advice that you can speak to for free. And this also includes if there's anybody that you know that you can signpost to these areas for advice as well. And this includes financial abuse as well. So if you know anyone being taken advantage of by partners, family members, or organizations, you can also see what advice is available to them online. And even if you're currently in a good place, as we were saying, look around you, see if anyone's portraying those signs and what you can do to help. On to the next slide, please. So here we're talking about scams and tricks before I pass you back over to Douglas. So here are a few things that we've put on here that you can be wary of. So I have a look at this slide and I think about phishing, smishing, and vishing. So try say that 3 times. It's a lot more difficult than you think. But we're thinking dodgy emails, random texts, and those phone calls from all over the UK that you get. You need to know what to look out for to protect your money and your personal data that comes with that. We also have things like romance scams. So if you've seen The Tinder Swindler on Netflix, you'll know that it's so key to stay up to date with exactly who you're talking about online. And if anyone's asking you for any money or anything, you need to know exactly who you're speaking to. And then we have our Black Friday, the big sale event of the year. If you genuinely need something and you've budgeted for it, brilliant, fantastic if it's in the sale and you're getting it at the best price you can. However, just because something is on sale doesn't mean you have to buy it. So again, we're talking about those new shoes or a phone, unless you really need it. Think, even though this has got 20% off, is it in my budget? Do I need it? You know, is this the right thing to be spending my money on right now? So please do your research, because a lot of the time with a Black Friday sale, if you keep an eye on the prices, they might go up a couple times in the weeks in the lead up to Black Friday before coming back down to their original price that they were the month before, but saying that they're on sale. So have a look around this grid and see sort of what you can think of and stay wary of. And remember, companies and people will get up to some funny things to try and get money out of you. So keep that in mind to stay clear of those scams and tricks that are out there. And over to you, Douglas.
Thank you very much. That was extremely helpful. I'm loving the leaky bucket. My bucket certainly has a lot of holes in it, and I certainly miss my student card. So yeah, that was absolutely brilliant. Perfect. So if we go to our next slide, please. So the good news is we're now at number 4 of our 5 financial wellbeing pillars. This one is insurance and other protection. And that's because sometimes unexpected things happen, and sometimes they're not always good things. However, before we get to that, we're going to try a poll 5. I didn't quite know where to put it, so I put it here. But if we can go to poll 5, please. So this one is, have you ever asked for help in managing your finances? Again, this is anonymous, and it's quite an easy one because it's yes or no. So we'll give you a couple of seconds to pull that one off. Now, there may be many reasons why you'd want to ask for help, and it could be because you're struggling at a certain point in your life. And certainly from my experience, I found that most people struggle at some point in their life. It could be because you want specific financial advice on a particular topic. So you might be going to a bank to talk about a mortgage or a loan, or it could be that you just want to learn more about money. So, you know, that would also be fantastic. But what I would say is don't be afraid to ask for help. So if we look at our poll, so we've said, have you ever asked for help in managing your finances? Yes, 38%, and no, 63%. I think that just about adds up to 100%. But as I say, certainly ask for help when you need it. You know, there's so many people who can help you, whether it be friends, family, university is a brilliant one, Google, even ChatGPT has got all the answers these days. So, you know, please do reach out. Great. So if we go on to the next slide. There you go. Thank you very much. And this is the insurance and other protection. So this is a bit of a weird topic because no one really wants to pay for insurance until you really need it. And by then it's usually too late. So I put 4 questions at the top of this slide that are certainly worth thinking about and for your own personal circumstances. So the first question is, what insurance do you currently have? Now, you may not need insurance at all, and you may have none. And if you've thought about that, if that's appropriate to you, that's absolutely fine. You may be paying for it directly. Like your holiday insurance package, they usually throw in your holiday insurance, so that's always a good one. You may be covered without even knowing about it. So for example, mobile phone insurance, sometimes your bank can cover you for that. So certainly look out for that. And you may even be charged it and you don't even realize you are being charged for it. So I've got a sofa, and they've been charging me insurance on that sofa for several years now, and I didn't even realize it was on there. But the general rule is, if you don't need it, you probably don't want to pay for it. So the next question is, so what insurance do you actually need? Now, this is probably something for you to go away and think about, because again, it's very individual. For example, you'll probably need contents insurance for your room and your possessions. But then again, you know, that may already be covered by the place you're already living in. So it's certainly worth checking because you don't want to pay for it twice. As I said, the rest depends on your circumstances. Car insurance, mobile phone insurance. What was interesting is my wife was paying for mobile phone insurance by herself, and my policy covered her as well. So we were paying for it twice. So you don't want to make silly, easy mistakes like that. The third question is, have you got the right cover? So for example, if you've got car insurance, do you want fully comprehensive cover, or do you want just third-party insurance? And obviously you'll pay different amounts depending on the cover that you want. It's also worth looking at things like how much your room is insured for. You know, I've seen quotes for, you know, £1,000 for everything that's in your room, up to 2 million. So if you haven't got £2 million worth of things in your room, you probably want to revisit that. But I think the key message here is make sure you've got the right type of insurance at the right level. And then finally there, number 4 is, are you paying the right price? So basically, where can you get the right price from? This goes back to what Jenny was saying, is can you negotiate a good deal? Can you research all the different companies? And just make the most of your money. So, for example, when your broadband comes to an end, that's usually a good time to haggle and fight them. If you've got Sky packages, they're usually desperate for you to stay and not to end the contract. So certainly use that in your favour. I've got boiler insurance and it jumps up every single year. So I just call them up and say, your insurance has jumped up by XYZ, and they usually bring it down to what it was beforehand. So, it's certainly worth the phone calls, and the worst they can do is say no. You'll probably hear lots of other insurances that you may come across, certainly when you start working. There may be things like critical illness insurance, income insurance. So I wouldn't worry too much about those unless you've got a particular thing you want to cover. But certainly look into it. And usually when you start with a company, they'll give you very good deals. Sort of in-house deal. So certainly try and make sure you've got the best value either with them or someone else. I've thrown in pet insurance at the end. So I've got 6 Tetrafish, which are the really small, colourful ones. The good news is they haven't got a high insurance value because they're quite easily replaceable. Just don't tell the children. But I do know many sort of friends and family who've got cats and dogs, and some of them have had some very nasty surprises with vet bills into thousands of pounds. So again, just to say, look across the market, see what you need to, what insurance you actually need that you don't already have, and make sure you get as best deal as you can. So that's insurance and other protection. So if we go to the next slide, please. So this is the final pillar, pillar number 6. This is preparing for your future. So we're going to jump straight to poll number 6, if that's okay. And here's an interesting one. Poll 6. What age are you planning to retire? So you can have under 50, you can have 50 to 59, you can have 60 to 69, you can have over 70, or you can have never. And this might be because you don't think you'll ever get the chance, or maybe because you love your job so much that you'll never want to retire. Not sure about that one. Or no idea. You may not have even thought about it until now. So I'll let you fill that one in. I think I was planning to retire at the age of 30. That hasn't worked out very well for me, or 40, and I've got a horrible feeling about 50 as well. But that's why we're having this conversation now, to make sure you can make the most of yours. So we've got a few more coming in. So this will give you the sort of directionally accurate scores. So under 50, we've got 19%. 50 to 59 is 15%. 60 to 69 is 27%. Over 70 is 0. I love it. So you've all got to listen to this section then. Never, 4%. There's a few people going to keep going. And no idea, 35%. Well, I'm loving the 20% under 50 retirements. So you definitely need to listen to this slot. So if we go to the next slide, please. So this is retirement and pensions. So you may be thinking that your retirement could be up to 50 years away. Let that sink in. So why are we talking about retirement and pensions now? Well, there's good news and there's bad news. So the bad news is you may have to work 50 years until you retire. So my advice to you is to try and pick a job that you love, because you're in it for the long haul. The good news is you've got a whole 50 years to start preparing for it. But you will need to start preparing for it at some point. So keep listening. However, you probably don't want to worry about it today. So I'm not just sending off anyone into a big panic. I just want to mention it for certainly when you start working. Now, you may have jobs already that pay into a pension. And after university, you'll certainly probably get a job that will pay into your pension. So my advice is don't ignore it when you get older. Say I personally want to retire to the Maldives. I've still got, as we've established, got a long way to go, but that's why I put a palm tree up on the slide. But you'll find that, say, a number of workplaces will give you money if you will match it if you go and work in one of their companies. So as they look out for that, in a lot of instances it's free money. But there are different ways to fund your retirement. Say the common way is pensions, and that's kind of the ones we've been discussing here, and they're basically a tax efficient way to put money away for later life in a sort of big savings pot. But as if we read through the points on the slide, the state retirement date is now when you're 67 years old. So you won't get any help from the state until you're 67, and that age is going up. And I dread to think how old it'll be when you get there. So it could be 68, 69, 70, or not at all. So just don't ignore your pension when you start working, and say the more you can put in and the earlier you can start, the better, because it gives it more time to grow with your investment. So if you're not saving out, you're missing out on free money. what I did say is there are different ways to fund your retirement. So, you know, people look at property and things like that. So as long as you're thinking about it and you've got some sort of plan, just don't wait 40 years to get interested in it. If I was to say the one thing that people come to me and they say what their biggest regret is, certainly over the age of 45, is that they didn't think about funding their retirement earlier. So you've been warned nice and early. Just certainly don't forget it. But obviously, it's your retirement. Just don't stick your head in the tropical sand on this occasion. Something to think about anyway. So if we move to the next slide, please. We're rapidly coming to the end. So in summary, financial well-being is a very big topic, and we've discussed a number of things here, including the 5 things we've said here: the budgeting and planning, savings and investments, debt, fraud and abuse, insurance and other protections, saving for life after work. There's one thing we haven't called out yet, which is definitely worth mentioning, is you may want to look at how you can make more money or earn more money while you're at university. You may already be trying it now with friends or by yourself, but it's certainly worth having a look at. I read somewhere that you can only reduce your costs as far as 0, but theoretically the amount of money you can make is pretty limitless. So it's maybe something to consider. I put a few things on this slide. Obviously you can get jobs in all sorts of weird and wonderful things, but what I would suggest to you is you pick something that you're interested in and you can get passionate about. So if you love websites or you're doing computer programming, you know, can you build websites for people? You know, can you be a personal trainer? Could you fix bikes? Could you teach a language? Could you set up a band, either for a wedding or pubs? Probably the best one I found, for me at least, was I tried to get on as many work secondments as I could, or summer internships. So I was into accountancy back in the day, so I joined some accountancy firms. I think NatWest does a great summer internship, but most companies will do some, or certainly the bigger ones will. And the good thing about that is you probably get paid quite well, but also you get some fabulous experience that you can then talk about. And in a lot of instances, they'll offer you a job through that summer vacation. So that's a really powerful one to think about. But as I said, yeah, the advice is to pick something that you enjoy and see what you can get. Just try not to impact your studies too much, unless you're Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg. But I'll leave that with you. And then moving to the last slide, you'll be pleased to hear. So here are my top 5 tips. If you've been falling asleep, now's the time to wake up. So the 5 things I would give to you is, firstly, the best advice I can give you is just to get interested in the topic. So get involved now in your personal finances and growth. It can be exciting, interesting, rewarding, and just take little steps and just keep learning. The second one is make a budget. Remember, put the 3 columns on a page: 1 for the money coming in, 2 for the money that must go out, and 3 for the money that is going out but probably shouldn't. I'll leave that with you. The third one is start saving when you're able to. Now, we're saying that can be difficult, but just little bits here and there will soon add up, and start building that rainy day fund, and then you can look further afield after that. The fourth one is look out for deals and get the most value for your money. So don't forget to discount, haggle, get your bang for your buck, and try and reduce that waste, plug those holes in that leaky bucket. And then lastly, if you need help, please don't panic, and as I say, reach out for support. That can be friends, family, charities, university, banks, and also look out for your friends and family as well. That's a really big key thing, because even if you're not struggling, you probably know someone who does. Anyway, so that's pretty much all we're going to cover. That was quite a lot. But I think the best thing you can do now is read through your notes and these slides again when you get the opportunity, and just take away some positive personal actions that you can get interested in, because it's a lifelong journey. So you might as well start now and say the more interaction you have with it, the more confident you'll feel. So so that was pretty much what we wanted to cover. It was great to speak to you today. I really wish you well with your university studies and for your working life afterwards. I may even see you working in NatWest one day, which would be fantastic. But hopefully we've got a bit of time left. So we'll open it up and hand it over to the Q&A panel, if that's okay. But thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Douglas and Jenny. That was great. Dalvinda, could you stop sharing the slides so that then everyone can see whoever's talking? That would be great. So I think what would be useful to start with is, Dalvinda, we were talking before the event about sort of the employability and events program that's coming up from NatWest, and so I thought if you could just do a very quick rundown of what's coming up next from NatWest, that would be really great.
Yep, no problem at all. My name's Dalvinda. I'm the Early Careers Attraction Lead at NatWest Group. Upcoming this week, we've actually got a webinar around how to ace your assessment centre. So we have been running these webinars every Thursday throughout February. So even if it's not an assessment centre NatWest Group, it'd be really useful for other assessment centres you've got coming up. You can sign up for that webinar via our events page. So if you go to NatWest jobs.com, early careers, and then on the early careers page, there's an events tab where you can find the link and you can join that this Thursday. We do have several programs that are still open. Our graduate programs are still open. We've got 17 different programs at different UK locations, which include Edinburgh, Bristol, Manchester, Birmingham and London. And we've got a summer internship, as Douglas was mentioned earlier. We've got a summer internship program, which is currently open as well in all the locations as mentioned. And also coming in the next few weeks, for first year students, we have an insight program, which will be an insight into the sector, the business. So if you're interested in that, please keep an eye on our early careers webpage. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We did have some pre-submitted questions, but we also had some people jumping in with some questions during the event. So I will ask two questions that are sort of fairly linked. So there's one person that said, is it advisable to get health and dental insurance? And then someone else who said, how essential is life insurance? So I suppose they kind of link together. And do students need to worry about that, or is that something for later on?
I suppose it depends how many sweets you eat. So I'll stick my hands up. I didn't have life assurance or dental insurance until I joined a company. And then you normally find when you join a company, they have some great schemes. But if it's something that worries you and it's something you want to be insured for, certainly go ahead and do it, and just look around for the best deals. The difference between insurance and assurance is insurance might happen and assurance is it will happen. So life assurance is covering you, say, for example, if you die. Now that becomes very important when you're married and you've got dependents that are looking after you. So then, that's really important. If it's just yourself, that's down to personal choice. You probably won't benefit from the life assurance because unfortunately you won't be here for that. Yeah, again, say have a look at all the list of insurances. We've listed a number of them here. Go through them and see what's important to you. And if you feel that you need to be covered, then as I say, just go out and get the best rates.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Douglas. There's another one here actually, which is, how would you advise managing finances with a partner who has different money values?
I've got a perfectly good example. That's my wife and myself. And please don't point any of this direction of her. I think, it's one of the key things you look at when you're in a relationship. You say, what are your values on so many different things? And money is a big one. And, it is actually one of the biggest reasons for divorce. So, it's useful to have these conversations up front. I certainly know that I save for our family and I know she spends for our family. And we try and have, as many friendly meetings as we can. And, we try and do things together and we try not to have any surprises. So at least she knows what I'm saving and I know what she's spending. I think the real difficulties come in when, people aren't aware of what's going on. But if you're transparent and open and going for the best deals and getting the best discounts, you'll chip away over time. It's difficult to change people, but then you can sort of meet in the middle. You might spend a bit more, someone might save a bit more. You can set up a joint account. Jenny made a really good idea of taking those savings out of your income early, so you don't see it there. Put it in a different bank account, and then you'll be less likely to spend it. So there's lots of different things, but as they start with an open and honest conversation with your partner.
Great, yeah, that's really good advice, because I think that's quite a hard conversation sometimes to start, but once you've started it is easier, definitely. I think we have a very small amount of time to sneak one more question in, and then I think we're probably going to finish there. So I suppose I'm just going to try and pick out the one that would be the best one for all attendees, which is a bit hard. I think a good question is, how can I find out more about financial well-being and money? I think that's a really good question that someone asked. And before I quickly hand over to Douglas and Jenny, I just wanted to highlight that we've got a brilliant page and Siddharth has just put it into the chat, so thank you, Siddharth. And on that page, there's lots of articles and they're written by experts and also by fellow students. And there's some really great advice on there in different subjects. So have a look on there. They're all free to access and share with your friends if you think that you find them useful. But yeah, so over to you, Douglas and Jenny. So how can I find out more about well-being, financial well-being and money?
Brilliant question. I love it. So there's so much material. There's almost too much material. So there's absolutely no excuse to engage it in a format in a way that works for you. Again, I would always say do something that interests you. So if you don't like audiobooks, don't listen to audiobooks. If you don't like social media, don't put it on social media. But, you know, there's books, there's social media, there's articles. All my social media now just pushes money articles through to me. It's obviously learnt through all the things that that's what I love. So they send it all to me, which is fantastic. Sign up to Martin Lewis. You know, he's very got his finger on the pulse. I think he's trying to be a bit like me, but, you know, certainly connect through to him, get on his news site. He's certainly better resource than I am to give you all those tips. Recommend books to your friends and everything. You know, Psychology of Money was the one that Jenny recommended to me, and I've recommended some back to her. But, you know, there's loads of materials out there. And there's one question that hasn't been asked, so I'm going to throw it in and get into trouble. The one is I always get asked is, what's the best investment? And I think everyone's looking for that $1 million idea, and if I had it, I wouldn't be here. But the best investment you can do right now is invest it in yourself. I'm going to pause for emotional impact. So on a serious note, you know, invest in yourself now. You know, it's a fantastic time to do it whilst you're at university. Go on the communication course, go on the presentation course, go on the money courses, you know, get involved in all the exciting things that interest you, become really good at it, and then just be the best you can be, and then, you know, bring that to the market, and then you'll be absolutely fine, I'm sure.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Jenny. Thank you so much, Douglas. Both of you have been fantastic today. I learned a lot. Honestly, I was taking notes half the time, so that's why my camera was off. But thank you both so much for a great session. And in case anyone missed it at the start, we will be sending over the slides and the link to the video on YouTube afterwards. But I can't say thank you enough, because I think I've learned a lot more than most people here have. Well, fingers crossed everyone picked up as much as me. But yeah, well, we'd like to see you guys again as usual, and I hope everyone had a great session. Thank you all once again, and we'll see you at the next BC Skills session. Thanks, and have a great day, everyone.